Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Leadership Exchange podcast. My name is Tracy, and I am joined by our wonderful guest today, Trude Van Horn. Welcome, Trude.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Tracy.
Yes. So, Trude, you are just involved in so many different things. I feel like everybody knows you in Dallas. You're very well respected. Tell us a little bit about, who you are, your background, and what you're currently doing.
Sure. I've been a CIO for about 20 years. I've been in the tech industry for, a lot longer than that. I've worked in banking, JP Morgan, American Express, Victoria's Secret, chemical companies, Office Depot. And it's been a great journey to be in all of these different kind of verticals. But when AI came along, I thought, wow, I'm never going to learn AI being a traditional CIO unless I jump in. So I've joined Cien.ai, an AI firm that is in the sales and revenue intelligence space. And it has been an amazing year of learning and doing. On the side, my side gigs are I teach at Southern Methodist University in their Tech CXO Excellence program. That's for kind of mid-career people who want to be C-suite leaders. I also am on a couple boards. One that I'm really proud of is the DFW-ATW, the Alliance for Technology and Women. It is a great mid-career meeting place for people in the DFW network. But in addition, we've had 500 girls go through their training program. So they start out saying, oh, I'm here because my mom made me come. And then they end up saying, oh, I want to have a job in tech. And then the other program, we've had about 125 women go through that. And it's a skills training program. And those 125 women on an annual basis have raised their salaries $3 million through this program. And we've gotten women out of shelters. Kids are not living with their mom in the car anymore. I mean, this is real stuff, Salesforce admin or project manager. So I'm proud of some of that work I do on the side where we're trying to raise everyone. And just, we need to continue to supply the pipeline of leadership for technology.
Yes, I love that so much. It really is building the next generation of leaders. So you and I had a little chat before this, and I think one of the things that I really enjoyed of our conversation was talking about business leaders and how they need to get involved with AI. And I think you and I both agree that, I think some business leaders are afraid or apprehensive or insecure about their knowledge. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a very interesting time for all of us. I think that the people who thought they could kind of sit back and wait, this train is moving too fast. Sit back and wait is just not an option anymore. I was in a meeting a couple days ago where there were a lot of senior people from a lot of different firms, and they talked about, oh, well, AI is really, the IT guys know what's going on and they know about this, but, we're watching and we're moving slow. And the advice I had for all of them was, you need to be figuring this out. You need to understand that you need to be supportive as a leader, first, safe and supportive. Create a sandbox for citizen developers. So it's not just the IT guys. Help the business folks get in there as well. You can save so much money through workforce enablement and just making people more efficient. And their ideas about that are going to be far better than IT's ideas about that or the business leader's idea about that if they can be involved themselves. And then I believe also the more senior leaders, it is easy enough now for you to get involved, whether it's through, no code. You can just go out to AI on the Google bar and say, okay, Gemini, tell me, how do I do some vibe coding? What should I start with? What is a good place to start? I said to them, use your resume and create a website that's based on your resume and just see what that's like, what you get asked, what you have to provide, how many iterations you need to go through in order for it to be perfect and the way that you want it. But I think getting people to be more participative and making sure that senior leaders are showing the way as opposed to watching it all unfold. Just back in normal development before AI, I used to say to executives, have you ever built a birdhouse or a doghouse? How many times did you have to go back to Home Depot to get more stuff because you didn't plan it right or you needed different tools? I mean, that whole sense of iteration, I think, is something that we all need to get comfortable with, but it's a different kind of iteration than we've been used to before. And there's no better way than to just get involved yourself. It also gives you, as a leader, some insight into the people and what they're having to go through to learn these tools. You know, if it's a challenge for you, it's a challenge for them as well. For a lot of people, we're just upending all of the things they've learned and the skills that they've built along the way.
It's so true. It truly is changing our workflows. I remember, 10 years ago, I was non-technical and I was running a tech startup. And, I took a 3-week boot camp and it completely, in the first week, I felt like I needed to apologize to my CTO because I just, I was making all of the mistakes that, I as like a non-technical founder, right? Like you just don't understand. You don't understand what flow is. You don't understand, how many pieces they need to keep in their head, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, with AI, it's obviously, a little bit different, but it is very much like that. I really like what you said about this idea that you need to get non-developers sort of involved in the mix as well, because I think this idea that, hey, AI is changing everything, we need to enable and show and teach everybody within the organization because we all need to get better together is huge, because it is changing how we work. And so I always like to say, right, the bottleneck of AI, if engineering speeds up so fast, where does the next bottleneck happen, right? It's going to happen to product. It's going to happen to executive leadership, right? It's going to happen to even down the pipeline, right? To QA, to testing, to et cetera, all the way down to customer support, customer success. And so it's almost breaking down the barriers within organizations to help people work more cohesively together, which is
right.
a really fun thing to see and do.
But that mindset really needs to come with the executives. Back in the day, the technology folks worked alongside of the business folks, and then we got moved into the data center and then into other buildings. Now is the time really where we need to come back together, because the ideas are going to be more complete if we've got both sides, the business side and the reason for this, as well as the technical side and how we can develop this systematically. I think that's really important. And the system developer, the citizen developer is so important to that.
Yes, that is very true.
We'll be back to the episode in a second, but first, I'd like to acknowledge the team behind the channel, This.Labs. We're seeing 3x to 5x productivity improvements with our teams and clients using tools like Cursor, Claude Code, and GitHub Copilot. We help teams adopt these technologies and get max value out of them through strategic partnerships, trainings, and other software engineering services. Check us out at ai.this.co. Thanks, now back to the video.
So I know, the advice that you gave for leaders is definitely, hey, get involved, try to do something and things like that. What other things that are you seeing people maybe not doing so well, or advice do you have for people?
I think brave is another characteristic I'm trying to teach people. With AI, I don't think we have to tamp down our expectations or our goals or the things that we think might be possible. I think with AI, we can kind of unleash that a little bit. And I don't know that people who aren't as closely involved with AI realize how far this technology can take us. And that bravery, that comes from people talking about what is possible in our business? What is holding us back in our business? How can we move forward? But it's a collective as opposed to just a few leaders who have gotten on the bandwagon. It requires everyone. And that being brave enough to think about how you're going to approach thought leadership for your team, I think is huge. And then there's some downsides from an executive leadership as well. You and I talked about this beforehand. Things are going so fast now. Our mid-level managers have a difficult role where they're managing the remote workforces. They've got people at home, people in the office. They've got lots of projects going on. They're one-to-one with some of their folks. Now we're adding agents and lots more projects because they're all happening at the same time. I think as leaders, we need to be really conscious of that stress and strain that we're putting on those mid-level leaders. Typically, they are the least trained, right? And they're the ones we continue to rely on because they have the skills that we admire and they're experts in their field. But that needing to juggle the agentic side, the multiple projects that still have the human component, and then the speed, I think to some degree, leadership and their expectations of speed may be unrealistic. And that's why I think it's really important for them to be involved in trying to do this, that iterative notion that just because you think we should have it done by Friday, and that may not be the case, but those middle managers quite often are the ones that are holding all of those things, the development, the plan, the scheduling, the communication, and then the resources, whether they're agentic resources or human resources. So I think that's something we have to watch out for. And then on the positive side, we've got all of the security stuff that was so difficult for anyone to be able to manage with AI is so much more elegant to manage through AI. There's so much more that we can get done. But again, how much can we expect it for change to be absorbed into an organization? New tools that are taking advantage of AI, people not necessarily fully understanding how to use them, and others not fully understanding the results they're coming up with. You and I talked about transparency in AI. We're in a trust building mode right now. We're still on the early days of that. And if you can't see the transparency and people can't explain it, that explainability factor, that's an issue too.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a fun time to be alive. But
it's great.
Yes,
it's so great.
I definitely agree with you about just going back to managers and expectations. But all of this to me again, I think it's funny because I feel like when you talk to developers or engineering leaders, it's a question of, for example, should you build harnesses or not, right? Well, it's not going to matter in how many years, a year, 6 months, 2 years, and so we sort of get caught up in this meta of, well, okay, we should be using skills now, right? But does it even matter because the models are going to get better? So should we roll this out to our team? So we do just get caught up in this like existential crisis almost of, well, it matters now. It's going to help me now, but is it going to matter in 6 months? And I think a lot of that, right, with these middle managers as well, is just a lot of just mental overhead. Thinking through like, what does this mean here? What does this mean here? How do I execute? And that's that sort of like forming and storming and then stopping and saying, okay, I need to actually execute. Where do you actually find that balance?
So I think right now the decisions about guardrails and harnesses is a different question. I honestly don't think it's there for the people that are building. I think it's there for the people who are buying and funding. Again, because they don't have that same level of understanding and expectation. They're too far removed from the details. And them understanding that the guardrails and the harnesses and the human in the loop and the auditing that we're doing on the side is going to make them more confident in the investment that they make. And I think that's critical. Yeah. Everything that we can do to bring that leadership group along with us is going to accelerate the entire process for a company or for a PE firm. Just having people that are aware, management consultants, people that are aware at the leadership level, I think is really important. And those harnesses and guardrails and that risk-averse attitude is what makes them comfortable to be more participative.
I think it's so funny because, I spend a lot of time in healthcare. And so in healthcare, AI is a little bit slower to adopt because, in order to do a prescription, for example, AI needs to be right 100% of the time. It cannot be right 99.99% of the time, but then it's okay if a doctor's having a bad day and accidentally does something. And, if you look at the percentages of human error compared to computer error, right? Like computers are going to outperform humans in terms of, being able to, I don't want to say judgment, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like in terms of percentages of, and so it's funny that us as humans still feel like we need to have a human in the loop or these different little protections against AI when when is going to be the reality that humans don't need to be in the loop anymore, right? Or, but again, now we're talking about this sort of like existential, what does this mean for us in the future? Which again, I think is where we all get, caught up, if you will, right? Versus just executing. And, I know you have some advice for people on just like how to approach AI projects, right? Like, okay, it's going to transform the world. Okay, it's going to transform our entire business. Well, what does that even look like? How do you actually even execute on that plan?
So there are so many firms. You're on the West Coast. You're in Silicon Valley. There's a lot happening around you. The rest of the world is not moving as fast as the pockets on the left and the right coasts are. My advice for companies is to start small with something that everyone can understand, and participate in the execution of that all the way in through deployment. An ROI that you can understand when it's been achieved, not this, it's going to save us from having to buy something in the future. That's a squishy ROI, but something that you can actually see and measure. I think those smaller wins are what's going to make the C-suite, the board, the CFO much more comfortable in moving forward. And I think you just have to chalk up a couple of those. You and I were talking about the stats. The stats are still bad. Between 65, depending on who you read, between 65 and 85% of all of the AI projects are stalling and failing. And then the ones that do survive are taking 5, 6, 7 times longer to get into production because we don't have experience with productionalizing a lot of this stuff. So that ability to start small, grow your knowledge, figure out who the experts are you have to build around your team. I think that's really important. And watch and monitor because the tools, this, Tracy, the tools have gotten so much better in the last few months. I mean, before Christmas, I remember encountering a lot of errors in the data, and I'm not seeing that anymore in the same kinds of testing I'm doing. So I just feel like the technology is getting better and better and better. And unless we bring everyone along with us, they're not going to see that improvement and build that confidence too.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think a lot of the hesitation that we see is, hey, somebody tried this a few months ago and it didn't work. So imagine you, Trudy, if you said, hey, you know what, I'm seeing a lot of errors. Okay, I'm not gonna pick it up and try it again. And then, 1 month later, 2 months later, the technology is there, which is, again, absolutely wild how fast it's moving.
Absolutely.
But it really goes to show that you just kind of have to be in it because the things that you learn, right? Like how your organization changes, how organizations and teams need to work differently together is a muscle that just takes time. Change management
Absolutely.
takes time. And so you have to
Absolutely.
be on the journey in order to land when, let's say the technology is 97% there, 90% there, whatever percentage you believe. When it gets to be 100, you have to have gone through all those cycles of change management and forming and storming and reorging the team around, the powerful abilities that AI has.
Yeah, I one of the things I like to say is, the Formula One has the best brakes in the world in those cars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so that they can go slow. It's so that the race car drivers have the confidence to go as fast as they possibly can because they've got the ability to stop and slow down at will.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very much like the compliance that we're wrapping around AI right now is that same thing. It's giving us the confidence to move forward. And I think your comments also about the interns are a good one. I try to remind people of that. You don't know how many mistakes the people in data entry are making today, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We know what mistakes AI is making because we're watching so closely, but we don't know, to your point about the doctor that's having a bad day. We just don't have that same kind of audit criteria wrapped around everybody else that the way we have it with AI. So we might have the same level of hallucinations if we were actually harnessing and watching all of our interns and all of our junior people.
Yes, totally. Last question is just how are you seeing business change? Like how things operate? You're at a startup right now. It's focused on AI. What's different?
Many of the things that we talked about taking offshore
Mm-hmm.
are things that AI can do for us. Data quality, contact center, reading documents and transcribing them. I mean, so many of those things. And when you think about that from a cost perspective, the cost differential is amazing, right? Speed, yes, but also the cost differential. I think that there is a much lower barrier for entry right now for people to have an AI idea and bring it forward. But I also think there's some trepidation. This market with so many companies joining the bandwagon for AI, it's going to be. There are companies that are going to be gobbled up by other companies that aren't going to make it. People are leapfrogging over others. It almost feels like it's an advantage for those who joined late. The tech is so much better for those who joined late and fewer guardrails needed if you join late. So many more skills available, so many more tools to get things into production. The infrastructure is in a place where it can handle a lot of these monster LLMs. So it is, the acceleration, I think, is exciting. And if you're working with a company who is standing back and still waiting, they might not be around for very long. Mm-hmm. It's the ones that are embracing it and embracing it hard that are going to be the ones that get to the finish line.
Yeah, I mean, I'll also say that it's never a bad time to just get started right now.
Absolutely.
If you feel like you're behind or you feel like you're waiting, the faster you get on the bandwagon and start learning, the better. But everybody is, you might be listening to this conversation thinking, wow, I'm so far behind. I haven't even done X before, but so many people are just starting off in their AI journey right now. So I think that's the great part about AI. It levels the playing field,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then also provides incredible competitive advantage, like once you sort of figure out what you're doing. So
just a shout out from me to the people that are watching. The folks who do this tech and are comfortable and experimental, they have to go grab somebody in their company who's not, and just show them, sit with them, spend a half an hour working through a problem online, have them watch you put something into production quickly, work through a gem from Gemini, work through something that really gets them excited. If they can see how quickly you can change the work that you do, I think people will get on board. And the more people we can get on board, the better for everyone in the company.
Yes, and we've definitely seen that. When we do AI transformation with engineering teams, it's amazing how somebody who hates AI and just is completely not excited about it and is a detractor, 5 minutes
Oh, yeah.
sharing with somebody
Yeah.
changes them into the biggest, believer and the loudest on the team. And so again, this sort of goes to that change management thing, right? This idea that like, look, it still comes down to the human. It still comes down to just, 5 minutes with somebody really makes a huge impact and a huge difference because you can show the power of AI. Trudy, it was so awesome talking to you. Where do we find you online?
Oh, Tracy, you can find, my name is Gertrude Van Horn.
Mm-hmm.
So LinkedIn, Gertrude Van Horn, there's not a whole lot of Gertrudes out there. So that'll limit it down.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy to be contacted. You can post my contact information in your podcast as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. So excited about these conversations. If you're in Dallas, Trudy is like plugged into the executive network there. So follow her on LinkedIn. She knows everybody there. And we thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
This episode is presented by This.Labs. We help teams adopt AI technologies to get maximum value out of their work. For free developer resources and more information about our services, go to ai.this.co.